Hey guys, it's X and Shadow, and welcome back to Let's Play Banjo-Tooie. In the last part, we completed Witchy World, and in this part, we're actually going to do one of the most interesting things about Banjo-Tooie. Not the game itself, mind you, but more the game's history. We're going to go after the stop and swap stuff. Now, I could have gotten some of this earlier, but considering that you need abilities from Witchy World in order to get all of it, I just figured I'd do it all at once. Anyway, those of you who are unfamiliar with Banjo might be asking, what the hell is stop and swap? Well, in the first game, Banjo-Kazooie, there were a couple of colored eggs that you could find, and they didn't really do a whole lot. But if you looked into the game's coding, or if you did a couple of really obscure cheat codes, you could find, like, I think it was like 6 of them or something like that. Anyway, the eggs didn't do much of anything in that game, but they were designed to have something to do with Banjo-Tooie. Yes, Banjo-Kazooie was designed with this sequel in mind. I guess the closest thing you could compare it to is Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles for the Sega Genesis. Basically, what would happen is that if you were playing Banjo-Tooie and then you got to a stop and swap spot, you could enter stop and swap mode where you would take out the Banjo-Tooie cartridge on the N64 and put in the Banjo-Kazooie one. Or you took out the Banjo-Kazooie one and put in the Banjo-Tooie one. I'm not sure exactly how the hardware specifics of it would work, but basically it would allow some cool connectivity stuff to happen in between the games. However, Nintendo wasn't too keen on letting kids rip stuff right out of rip games out of their N64 while it was still playing, so they were sort of iffy about that and decided, yeah, we're not gonna do that, okay, thanks, bye. So yeah, stop and swap ended up not being a thing, which is unfortunate because I love intergame connectivity, just because, you know, having your stuff happen in one game and then immediately transfer to the next helps breed a sense of, like, continuity and stuff. Like, for example, in Pokemon Gold and Silver, yeah, it's technically a continuation of Red, Blue, and Yellow, and I love it for that, but when you fight Red at the end of the game, he's not necessarily using your team, he's just using Red's team, so it feels a little bit less distinct that way, as opposed to Pokemon Black and White and Black and White 2, where if you connect the games, you know, the previous player character is actually named, you know, your name, as opposed to just being black and such. But anyway, yeah, unfortunately, Stop and Swap wasn't able to be used to its fullest potential in Banjo-Tooie for the N64, although I hear that they did actually add some of that stuff back into the Xbox Live Arcade release. So, in order to make up for not being able to actually stop and swap, in Banjo-Tooie there are a couple of hidden extra items lying about Spiral Mountain and the Isle of Hags. In Jinjo Village is the Ice Key, and you get that by climbing up into that little cavern and beating up that Banjo-Kazooie pack. In this case, however, in Spiral Mountain there are the 2 eggs, and I don't remember what colors they are. Basically, what you need to do is you collect the eggs by flying and using the grenade eggs. Now, you can get the one in this waterfall pretty much whenever you want. No, actually, I lied. You can get the one in the waterfall as soon as you get the grip grab. But in order to get the last egg, you need both the aerial aim ability and the grenade eggs. So that's why I just recommend waiting until Witchy World in order to get these things, because, you know, that's just when you're able to get them the most easily. Now, you really don't need to get any of these. They're pretty much the most optional things in the game, because you don't get too much great stuff for going after these eggs and getting the Ice Key. The Ice Key is important to unlocking the transformation that you get in the Isle of Hags Wumba Hut in, what was it, Pine Grove, I think it was? That's where you need the Ice Key in order to get the Mega Globo, which is what you use to use Wumba's transformation in Pine Groves. But the 2 eggs just unlock some minor abilities that aren't too useful. They're nice for sure, but, you know, it's sort of a letdown that, you know, they had this big epic thing planned for Stop and Swap, and in the end, just due to hardware failures, time crunch, and Nintendo being a little bit authoritarian about this sort of stuff, they weren't able to really take advantage of the system's full potential, I think, because, you know, Stop and Swap would have been really, really cool, because I don't know how much they had planned to do this in Kazooie, but if they had like planned a whole bunch of areas that you could have gotten to only with Tooie power-ups, I think that would have been really, really cool because it would have bred a nice coexistence between the two games. Because it's sort of odd going back and playing Kazooie after you played Tooie as much as I have, because Tooie is just an improvement in so many ways, even just as with stuff like grip grab and stuff. It's a little bit easier to play. So going and exploring the Kazooie levels with these abilities would just be a ton of fun. Anyway, this is Heggy the Hen, and she's the one who you go to get all of this extra stuff. Basically, you throw the eggs into these nests here, which is an automatic cutscene, by the way, and then Heggy will go and sit on them and hatch them. You might notice that there's an egg on the top floor, but Heggy can't really reach there because she's a waddling fat ass. So yeah, once you bring the eggs to Heggy, sorry, it's just a little bit of a alliteration or whatever you want to call that. Rhyming, they sound similar. Anyway, when you bring the eggs to Heggy, she'll unlock the special ability. The special abilities in there. The first special ability that you can get is a cheat code, which basically allows you to get homing eggs. And the second one is the Brigo Bash, which is a new attack that you can get. It's humorous, but it's not very useful. Basically, you press the B button twice and you smash Kazooie on the ground. I love that animation, and it's a hilarious move. But unfortunately, it's just easier to either roll into enemies, use eggs, or use that beak move. So unfortunately, you're not going to be using it a whole lot. It's good for a laugh, but not much else. Anyway, back in the code chamber. Yeah, I'm starting to get to the point where I need to edit a bit more. We have two more cheats to enter into the cheat code room here. The first is the one that I got for having five Cheeto pages, which is the eggs cheat, which is one of the most useful cheats in the game because it doubles the amount of eggs that you can hold at any given time. So instead of just a measly 25 grenade eggs, now we've got 50, which allows us to pretty much rape every single boss that we come across. Except for a few, but I'll get to those later. Anyway, the other ability that we got is the ability from Heggy's egg, which is basically the homing eggs cheat. Basically, it allows eggs to home in on enemies, which the thing is though that the coding on it is a little bit finicky. Like there, you saw that it curved towards that enemy, but it's not really super reliable, and sometimes it can sort of dick you over, like when you're trying to hit like an environment in the background, like you're trying to break something with a grenade egg, and if a flying enemy passes by, the egg will home in on the flying enemy instead of shooting straight towards where you want it to. Again, I keep it on just because it can be useful on some of the smaller flying enemies, but for the most part, it's not something that you need to have, and if you skip out on that one, it's not a big deal. Again, the stop and swap stuff is probably the most optional stuff in the entire game. You don't lose a whole lot by not experiencing the stop and swap stuff, and I guess that's part of what makes Banjo-Tooie and Kazooie a better combo than, I'm just gonna say because it's the closest example, Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, because those games really falter when you play them separately, just because they're sort of short and they sort of lack depth, and I don't even really like them when they're combined together, but that's just a Flame Warrior topic that I'll cover on a different date. But when you play Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, they really do stand on their own. But if you do play them back to back, even without the stop and swap stuff, it really does feel like a much grander adventure in scope. Because while Kazooie feels very small when you compare it to Tooie, because it's not just the fact that it takes place in one smaller area, because Grunty's lair is nowhere near the size of the Isle of Hags, but it's just like you get teleported to magic little mini dimensions with the levels in them, and it just doesn't have the same sort of scale as exploring a gigantic, I don't want to say Metroidvania-styled world, because it's not exactly like a Metroidvania, but it's close enough, There's just a lot more scope to Tooie, and that's part of why I enjoy it. But it's part also why I think it's a better sequel, because, the scales and the size and the scale of the world has increased since Kazooie, so, it's a natural evolution for the franchise in that way. At least I think. Anyway, now that I've done pissing people off, we have unlocked the 4th level in the game, Jolly Roger's Lagoon. Basically, it's in a new area of the world called Clifftop, which you need the split-up pads from Witchy World in order to get to. So, yeah, well, you can do some things out of order in Banjo-Tooie. Like, if you get enough jiggies and stuff, you can skip entire worlds. You're still going to need specific abilities to get to the different levels of the hub world, so don't think that you can just skip Witchy World entirely. You're still going to need to get those split-up pads. But anyway, with that, now we have another honeycomb making us even more invincible. Well, I shouldn't say invincible, but, you know, enemies aren't nearly as much of a pain in the ass now because, you know, even just one more honeycomb makes traveling around a whole lot easier. Anywho, now we're getting our first example of using a split-up pads in the overworld. And pretty much the only one, really, because, you know, the split-up pads are more of an inter-level thing. Mostly just because you can't keep Kazooie in Witchy World and then have Banjo explore the overworld. No, you have to keep both. You have to keep both characters in the same basic area if you want these sort of things. That's just basically a coding thing so that the game doesn't get too confused. But you split them up and then you put them on those two different pads and then you unlock the fourth area. Well, okay, I guess you could say fifth because, you know, Jinjo Village. No, is it the fourth? No, the Jinjo Village, wherever the fuck Mayhem Temple is. Okay, yeah, it's the fifth. This is the fifth area of Isle of Hags, the cliff top. The first thing you're going to want to do here is get the ice eggs, which is our fourth egg power-up, and almost our last. We've only got one more after this. Thankfully, if you have the eggs power-up on, it'll automatically double your egg supply, even though you haven't had the ice eggs before, so don't worry about having to turn the ability on or off like that. You know, as soon as you... Normally it's a 50 egg limit, but since we have the eggs power-up equipped, it's 100, even though we had the power-up equipped before we got the ice eggs. The second thing you're going to want to do, even though it's not going to come up for another couple of parts, is you're going to want to press this Chuffy switch here. Clifftop is unique in that it's the only Isle of Hags area that actually has a Chuffy station. You only need to use it one time, and that time isn't going to happen until we get to the 5th level in the game. But still, you're going to want to do that now before you forget, because you need to use the grip gab for this, and you're going to need to use that mumbo pad the next time you come down here. So yeah, I've more than once I've gone through the entire game without pressing the button. I get to the point where I need to use mumbo for that jiggy, and then the train's not there because I didn't open up the Chuffy station. So I had to go all the way back, switch to Banjo, press the switch, and then go all the way back to being mumbo again. Anyway, what you're also going to want to do is you're going to want to press the switch down here, which will unlock the way to the 7th level in the game. I just do that now so I don't forget about it later. There's also a couple of like notes and stuff you can get over there, but that's not really too necessary at the moment. Anyway, next time we are going to explore the 4th level in the game, Jolly Roger's Lagoon. I'm X and Shadow, and I'll see you guys later.